everyone, and welcome to the Bourbon Obsessed Bourbon Podcast for Friday, February 21st. I am Ed from BourbonObsessed.com, also known on Instagram as Bourbon_Obsessed. I publish a bi-weekly newsletter featuring the latest bourbon news and releases, and also do this podcast for your listening pleasure. Today I'm again joined by my friend and expert bourbon enthusiast, Dean Langdon, and we'll be discussing the news stories. But first, Dean, do you do anything interesting in bourbon this week?
Well, this was a relatively busy week in bourbon, Ed. We had a benefit for an Al Young scholarship. If you don't know, Al Young was with Four Roses for many years, master distiller there, and the Lexington Bourbon Society did a fundraiser for the scholarship in his name at Western Kentucky.
He's actually brand ambassador.
My apologies.
And historian.
And historian. So, and his wife was there along with Brent Elliott, and so we had a great time sampling different Four Roses blends and having some people blend it and having Brent Elliott judge those. So that was one of the fun things we did this week. What about you?
Well, I did that too. And then we also had a fantastic party last night for another group we're in, the Kentucky Bourbon Influencers, at Castle and Key. And Castle and Key was really great to us, and everybody had a fantastic time. And Dean, you were there too.
It's a great space, and that's a great group. There's people from all different aspects of the industry, and so I'm sure you can follow Kentucky Bourbon Influencers and get a sense of what we do. But yeah, it's a wonderful space at Castle and Key. They take great care of us.
They did. Alrighty, shall we get started with the news?
Please do.
Alrighty. So our first news story, it's actually could have some good impact, positive impact for bourbon sales. It's the India bourbon tariff reduction. A new trade agreement between the U.S. and India will significantly reduce India's tariffs, which are incredibly high. So they're going to drop from 150% to 100%. Which is still high, but it's significantly better than 150%. Currently, India ranks as Kentucky's 14th largest export market, importing $3 million in whiskey annually. With the tariff reductions in place, this figure is expected to significantly increase, providing new growth opportunities for Kentucky distillers. So,
I think that's a great development. Imagine if they reduced it to 50%. That's a huge market by population. If that triples it, though, that's still just $9 million in sales, which in my mind is not a huge amount of sales. Let's get them up in the tens of millions over there in India. They got lots of people, so maybe this is a great first step for that.
Yeah, I mean, I did some reading into India's tariffs for another article that I had written at one point, and so I'm assuming this is referring to the national one, but it varies like hugely in the different regions. I think they refer to them as states. I'm not don't quote me on that. But they can vary vastly sort of how it does in the U.S., where the price can be much higher in one state or another based on the taxes, but they're not anywhere near the difference. As I recall, one could be 20%, and the other one could be. So they all get added on top of these numbers. So
yeah.
It's amazing, honestly, that they buy anything from outside the country, which is obviously the point of the tariffs.
Sure, yeah. Well, again, it's just a positive development. I couldn't tell exactly when that was going into effect, if it's already in effect. But anything that helps us increase bourbon sales here in Kentucky is a good thing because, I think we're seeing a little bit of a moderation in the national market. So we need to build those export markets.
Yeah, everybody's counting on India, other Asian countries in Asia.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Bardstown Bourbon did a collaboration with Amrut out of India, and I thought that was an interesting product. So who knows what else we'll come up with now that we've got greater inroads to the India market.
And of course, we know that Amrut was the first Indian single malt, actually, and it debuted in Scotland originally, and because a lot of the Indian whiskey prior to that, and probably still currently, it's hard to know for sure. It used like molasses as a base, which doesn't qualify as whiskey in any other part of the world. So they couldn't sell their stuff labeled as whiskey. So they needed single malt to do so. Well, something with grain, obviously. But so they made the first the single malt, and Amrut was the first to produce that.
I actually did not know that, and I'm educated, and I'm grateful for that. So, and I'm sure our listeners are too.
Well, there's a nice article on India's whiskey on bourbonobsessed.com for anybody who wants to read and learn more. And our next story, so this story is along the lines of things that we see, unfortunately, occasionally now. So Jack Daniel's had a partial warehouse collapse, which was, like a week and a half ago now, I think. A partial warehouse collapse occurred at Jack Daniel's distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee, but fortunately no injuries were reported. The warehouse was built in the late 1960s, so it's younger than us, and holds around 19,000 barrels. Approximately 3,000 barrels were involved in the collapse, and the article that I read said that the spill was mostly contained to the site of the collapse, so I guess that means a little of it wasn't, but still, and I guess that's pretty good. There's only 3,000 out of 19,000, but that's not insignificant.
It's not insignificant. I mean, I saw the pictures of the site, and it did look like the rear, less than a quarter of a warehouse. The roof had collapsed, and there were some barrels strewn about. But it also looked like there were some intact barrels, and so it'd be interesting to see, what the processes are. The distilleries have to have an action plan for when something like that happens, and they hope they never use it. But I'd love to learn more about just what exactly a distillery does when something like that happens. I think you're right. They contained just about all spills, but you get environmental people in there. You get, who knows who else in there. But apparently they still had tours and everything. It didn't stop the normal operations. They just had to do a little bit of cleaning up.
Well, I think it was out by the bottling facility that's there, so that's not. It's near the main campus, but it's not right where all the main buildings and where the tours go. So
right, yeah, yeah. So an unfortunate event, but I'm sure Jack Daniel's will be just fine.
Just for interest, when a lot of times I start and let ChatGPT summarize these things, and then I go back and edit it, ChatGPT just added it all on its own at the end, that they're assessing how this loss would affect their whiskey supply. Now, 3,000 barrels, I don't think would affect Jack Daniel's all that much, and their whiskey no longer appearing on the market. So it's just so funny what these chatbots pull out of
they're
nowhere.
a blessing and a curse, aren't they? So
although I probably shouldn't say this because now it's going to remember it and use it against me. Okay, so this next one's a very good story. So Sazerac has a California wildfire relief fundraiser featuring rare bourbons. And Sazerac, for anybody who doesn't know, they own Buffalo Trace Distillery, Barton 1792, and quite a few other things. And they've launched a fundraising initiative to support California wildfire relief efforts. Offerings include the first ever single barrel of Pappy Van Winkle 15, a complete set of the Pappy Van Winkle Bourbon Collection, and a bottle of Eagle Rare 25, with 100% of the proceeds benefiting World Central Kitchen and Another Rally charities. So it's going to be an auction for the Pappy 15 barrel, and then it's raffle tickets for the other two prizes. And they end at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, February 23rd, this Sunday. So everybody's still got a few days to enter.
And I think that's a great cause, Ed. I looked a little bit into what the charities do. World Central Kitchen is known for providing meals to anybody who needs them after a disaster like this. I think they provide over 600,000 meals already.
Yeah, it's a crazy number. Because when I
huge.
did that,
and you think about that, it's that's a lot of people. That's a critical element to helping folks recover. And then another rally just helps provide support to hospitality workers. And you think about all the people who are working in the hotel, the restaurant, the bar industry in that part of the world who don't have anything to do right now. And so they obviously need some support. I can't think of a better cause. And kudos to Sazerac for donating the products. it's really great to see them do auction off a single barrel of Pappy. Again, I think that's the first time that's ever happened. Hopefully that draws a lot of traffic and a lot of money for a good cause.
Well, we could check it right now, but when I last looked at it, was already over $3 million.
Wow. Yeah, I tried to check the other day, and I couldn't. I got frustrated in trying to dig that deep, but that's excellent. You
didn't pass its credit check, I guess.
That's not surprising. Not surprising. I didn't get past that. So.
But yeah, that's great. I mean, the fact that it's going to raise that much money is just fantastic.
Yeah.
So the next story is slightly dated now. Green River Whiskey joins New York racing team and J.J. Yealy, honestly not positive how to pronounce his name, in quest for the 2025 Daytona 500. So the Daytona 500 is over, but we still can have fun talking about it. So Green River Whiskey teamed up with the New York racing team and driver J.J. Yealy for a shot at the 2025 Daytona 500. Unfortunately, we know now that his bid was unsuccessful, but I found this particularly interesting because I think it was last year, was it the year before? I think last year when Lux Row had their Rebel Bourbon sponsor another driver. They sponsor Richard Childress Racing with driver Kyle Busch, who was also was in the Daytona 500 this year. So Interesting to see two of our Kentucky distilleries essentially competing against each other on the track.
On the NASCAR circuit, right. Yeah, I mean, it's ironic. I looked at the Daytona results, and unfortunately, this car didn't even qualify. So
he missed it by one or something.
Yeah, I mean, whatever, I mean, I think it's a great marketing tool if the car qualifies and the folks can see it go around the track several times, but that apparently didn't happen this time. I couldn't tell if this was a season-long sponsorship or just for the Daytona 500. Hopefully Green River will do that for the whole season, and folks will get to see, that Green River car out there going very fast and go out and buy some bourbon.
It's actually a cool looking car. Did you see?
I thought it was too. Yeah, I thought it was really neat looking. It's a different, just the color scheme and things like that was great. So hopefully we'll see it in some other races later on this year. We hope.
Yeah, I mean the press release made it sound like it was just for that race, but it didn't specifically say that, so I don't know if it'll be ongoing. But the Rebel Bourbon sponsorship, though, that is for
the whole season.
The season, yeah.
Well, we're going to leave our listeners hanging on that, and maybe we'll find out and answer the question next time.
Or watch the next race and see if
There you go, right.
So our last story is another good donation-related one. So Yellowstone Bourbon National Parks Conservation donation over the course of their time has reached $1 million. So Yellowstone Bourbon has reached a major milestone in its commitment to preserving our national parks, surpassing $1 million in donations to the National Parks Conservation Association. Since 2018, the brand has partnered with NPCA to support conservation efforts, helping protect and maintain some of America's most treasured landscapes. They have also renewed their partnership with the NPCA, which includes an annual donation of more than $250,000. So that's pretty good.
I think that's great. And they're doing a video series about different national parks or national park areas. I actually saw that. I think they posted it today early. I think it just came out today or yesterday, and it's really nice. It's very short. It's about the California desert, and there's literally no mention of Yellowstone bourbon. There's just a plug at the end with the logo, which I think is very tasteful and sort of fits what I think about when I think about Yellowstone. They're a good group down there, and they make excellent bourbon, supporting a good cause. All good things. Yeah,
no, that's a fantastic cause. I mean, the national parks always, they're vast, and they
are.
They need a lot.
It looks like they need some help. They always need help. I mean, it's that's a lot to maintain. People don't understand what it takes to keep trails clear and how much trash people leave, and the number of people that visit our national parks is huge. I don't have that number, but I know there's just a lot of people that take advantage of it.
No, it's very huge. I mean, it's great that people enjoy that resource, and a lot of people also come from other countries to see our national parks. So
if you take a Yellowstone bourbon bottle into the national parks, make sure you pack it out. Do not leave it in the park.
Always good advice. Dean, I almost forgot that this story is just in. It actually missed my newsletter, unfortunately, but we got plenty of time. It's really just to save the date. So National Bourbon Week is going to return in June 2025. So mark your calendars. National Bourbon Week is returning to Bardstown, Kentucky, June 10th through 15th, 2025. This will be the second year of the event, and I haven't actually seen a press release on this, but supposedly the Bardstown Collection bourbons are going to go to being released every other year. And since the week's events largely centered around these distillery releases, there were other activities too, but that was a big part of it. So I'm a lot interested to see actually what fills in the blanks.
Yeah, and it's we're coming up on March, so June's not that far away. Hopefully they'll get a press release out here pretty soon. But it's important to save the date because there's so many events these days that if you don't put it on there, all of a sudden you're going to be 3 places at once, and none of us have figured out how to do that, even you, Ed.
No, I know. Well, just last night there were 3 places I wanted to be at once.
Right.
Couldn't do it. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the new bourbon and other whiskey releases. There's been quite a few of them lately. There were quite a few last week, and that's continuing this week. So our first is BR Distilling Company launches limited release Blue Note Special Reserve. BR Distilling Company has unveiled its second annual Blue Note Special Reserve, a limited release bourbon. This expression is a blend of 10 casks finished in various barrels, basically chosen so that I can mispronounce most of them, including cognac, Madeira, sherry, port, triple sec, apricot brandy, amontillado, vanilla cognac, and vino de naranja, with ages ranging from 4 to 19 years. And that's bottled at 116.3 proof at a price of $225 for a 750 milliliter bottle. So what do you think of that?
And just 2,000 bottles, I'm going to be blunt. I think that's probably enough, 2,000 bottles. Good blenders are wonderful, and I haven't tried this, so I can't say, but 10 casks just seems like an awful lot to try and get a good marriage of those flavors. I think you'd have a hard time trying to pick out all the different flavors because there's got to be a point where it's just too many. I wonder about a couple of those, like the triple sec and the vanilla cognac. I would guess that 1 or 2 of these is just going to be so much stronger than the others that am I getting the bang for the buck out of those 10 different casks? That's all speculation because I haven't tried any of them.
No, I haven't tried it. It sounds interesting. I was trying to think. I think the most I've ever had a blend of things is 3 different casks.
Right.
Probably,
yeah, I've had a triple finish things, and they can be done well. What I had was really good, but
I was just going to I won't get there quickly enough. But I thought on their website it lists the exact. I thought that it lists the percentages that were used of each barrel. So, I'm assuming that they've balanced it out so that the stronger flavors aren't overpowering. They make good whiskey, so I'd certainly like to try it.
I appreciate the fact that it had to be a challenge to blend whiskey from 10 different casks with 10 different finishes. As reviews come out, especially, I'm sure eventually we'll get one from you on Bourbon Obsessed. We'll see what people think about it. So snag one of those 2,000 bottles before they're all gone.
Let's head out now.
We'll be back in a minute, listeners.
So the next story is Evan Williams' Pegasus Kentucky Derby Festival bottle for 2025 has been released. I believe we're already almost at the Kentucky Derby, but really it's just a couple months away. Evan Williams has released its 2025 Kentucky Derby Festival bottle featuring a 2017 vintage Evan Williams single barrel bourbon bottled at 106 proof. Each bottle is hand-dipped in pink wax and includes an official 2025 Pegasus pin in an attached envelope. It was available starting February 13th at the Evan Williams Bourbon Experience and select Kentucky retailers for $89.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle. And as I was saying earlier, I stopped by Evan Williams yesterday when I was in Louisville, and they had already sold out for the day. So I have yet to get one of these, and hopefully will.
I think that's a neat a neat touch to the Evan Williams single barrel. It's a great Derby memento. We see a different distillery doing a Derby bottle, but this is more, I think, tied in with the Louisville celebration and the Pegasus pin and all that. And Evan Williams has its downtown Louisville facility there. So, again, Evan Williams single barrel is in my mind, one of the most underrated products out there. It's good value for the money, and now we got a collectible. So.
Well, like everything, it used to be a really good value for the money, and then it got made Kentucky only, and then its price went way up, and then I started seeing it again in other states where, interestingly, its price was lower, but in Kentucky it still stayed elevated, even though now it's not exactly Kentucky only anymore. But prior to all that, it was definitely a fantastic value.
Yeah.
And now it's well, I bought some in Tennessee for like in the 30s. That's a really good value.
That's
at that
a great
price.
value. Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, $90 is a special price for this special bottle.
Yeah.
But you're right. At retail now is around $45. I want to say
In Kentucky,
and it's still a fair price. $35 is a great price. I'd buy it all day long at $35. So.
But this one, this is definitely worth it to me. I will buy this too because it's at a little bit of a higher proof. It's a 7-year-old, so it's worth it, I think. But
yep.
Next, A. Smith Bowman Cask Strength Bourbon No. 4. A. Smith Bowman Distillery has announced. I skipped one. We'll go back to it. Has announced the 4th release in its Cask Strength Bourbon series. Hand-selected by distiller David Bach, this year's release has been aged a minimum of 10 years and presents itself at 139.7 proof. A. Smith Bowman Cask Strength Bourbon No. 4 will be available through an online lottery. That lottery opens February 24th, which is Monday?
Right.
At noon Eastern Time. So bottled, as we said, at 139.7 proof, and it's $99.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle. Have you had any of these?
I've not had any of the A. Bowman Cask Strengths. I've heard good things about them. I mean, this is just, I think the lottery just runs 10 days or so. And if I read it correctly, you've got to go to the distillery to pick it up like within a month. So I'm sure they'll get great response on it. That's hazmat proof, right? At 139.7.
Well, just below, so you can
just below. So, but it's you're going to want to sip this one, folks, not gulp it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've never had any luck in the lottery, but I have tried one of the releases of this, and it was actually really good. And I'll be trying my luck again.
Wishing you the best in that. I'll be happy to share it if you will.
I'm sure you will. All right, let's go back to the one I skipped. So, 3-chord Backstage Series Allman Brothers Band Peach Brandy Barrel-Finished American Whiskey is quite the mouthful, but 3-chord has unveiled the latest release in its Backstage Series, paying tribute to the Allman Brothers Band for a second time. This limited edition whiskey commemorates the 53rd anniversary of the release of the Allman Brothers' Eat a Peach album. It's a peach brandy barrel-finished American whiskey using a blend of 9-year-old Kentucky bourbon and 11-year-old Tennessee whiskey. It's bottled at 107 proof, and it's priced at $200 for a 750 milliliter bottle.
And I thought it was interesting. I mean, I like the Allman Brothers Band. They're a fond memory from my younger days, and I normally wouldn't be impressed with just because there's a connection between a musician and a bourbon. But this one looks really interesting to me. I mean, I saw it's a 60-40 blend, 60% of the 9-year-old Kentucky bourbon and 40% of the Tennessee whiskey. But the peach brandy barrels are from the George Washington Mount Vernon Distillery, which is a unique twist. That that's got to be done, I think, just right. I don't want peach brandy, but a nice peach flavor in a bourbon would be a great addition if it's subtle enough in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm definitely interested in, trying literally everything, but I'm interested in trying this as well. It's their second 3-chord has done a number of things with musicians, and this is their second Allman Brothers one, and the first one I think was Peach Wood finished.
Yep.
I hadn't tried that one. Significant price differences between the two, though. I think that one had younger whiskeys in it.
I think that's right, and I think the last round in 24 was like $50, but it was like 6-year Indiana bourbon and 3.5-year-old Tennessee bourbon, which is a lot younger juice, and I think they've realized that if they've got something here, they're going to price it for the market, as they should.
Yeah, so it sounds like we got a lot to try, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so next is Bulleit Bottled in Bond Bourbon. So Bulleit has introduced its first bottled in bond bourbon. The bourbon was distilled at the Bulleit Distilling Company in Shelbyville, Kentucky, and aged for at least 7 years. It's available nationwide starting in February 2025, and I actually saw it in the store like a week or two before and bought it because it's actually reasonably priced. Before the press release came out, the press release I just saw a couple days ago. So it's bottled at 100 proof, which it has to be because it's bottled in bond, and it's priced at $54.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle. So 100 proof, 7-year, all distilled in Shelbyville.
I think that's an interesting.
Reasonable.
Yeah, that's an interesting addition to their product mix. I'm interested to try it because, a lot of times you'll see folks push out that bottled in bond at 4 years, which is the minimum age for it. The fact that they've waited 7 makes me think that they're being cautious and careful about getting a good taste, the flavor that they want. And it wasn't there at 4 years apparently, and so
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Yeah, well, first it made me think, because I still think of that Bulleit distillery, because I remember when it was put up that as like a new distillery, and to think that now it's already got 7-year-old just sort of shows how time flies. So that was the first thing that struck me, that boy, I'm getting old. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good value. It's at 7 years. I guess I'm not. I don't know exact, because Bulleit had sourced things in the past for their other whiskeys. I assume the Bulleits that are on the market now are distilled in Shelbyville, or that other that second distillery that they have in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. But I guess I don't know. But we know that this one's definitely distilled there, because that's the beauty of bottled in bond. You have to be told where it's distilled, and if it's bottled at a different place, you have to be told where it's bottled. And unfortunately, you look at a lot of labels and they say bottled in bond, yet they somehow don't have all that information. So I always find that very interesting too, because people say how much of an effort it is to get things approved by the TTB, yet they consistently let bottled in bond labels through that don't have the required information on them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Well,
yeah, it's still, even if it's not a compliant bottle, you got, to me, it's always just some reassurance of the quality, and the where it came from and when it was made, and that it, it's not, it's just not. It's, to me, bottle and bond is just the best. It's the standard for bourbon, and so it's good to see somebody else. I mean, we know Heaven Hill's founded on that, but having other brands do that has got to be good for the industry.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of bottled and bond, and yeah, it's unfortunate that the distilling date and bottling date is no longer required to be on the label either. I mean, it's gradually been decreasing the amount of information that we get, although we still get to know that it's at least 4 years old if it's not age stated, and we are supposed to know where it's distilled and where it's bottled if different. So, but I wish they'd go back to the dates though. Yeah, personally. Yeah.
Well, I see this one was actually from the spring of 2017. So, that's it's technically, I don't know exactly when they bottled it, but it could arguably be 7.5 years old. Yeah, you don't put that on the label.
No, exactly, at least 7. All right, so this next one, Edmund's Honor Vanilla Barrel Aged Bourbon Whiskey. I guess it's tough to know whether this is would fit into finished whiskey or flavored, because we'll see how it goes along, because otherwise I don't usually talk about the flavored whiskeys. But actually I thought the vanilla part of this was interesting, so I'll get to the point. So Edmund's Honor has released its vanilla barrel-aged bourbon whiskey, a unique expression that undergoes finishing in Madagascar vanilla extract-soaked cognac casks. The bourbon is a tribute to, I'm not going to pronounce this right either, Edmund Albius, the overlooked Malagasy botanist prodigy who revolutionized vanilla cultivation by hand-pollinating orchids. I had no idea about the process around growing vanilla and found it very interesting and went down a big rabbit hole of spending time reading about vanilla instead of working on the newsletter the other day. It's available at select retailers in Georgia, New Jersey, and Florida, or nationwide via the company's website. It's bottled at 90 proof, and it's $54.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle. And it's that part where it says Madagascar vanilla soaked cognac casks that made me not know where to put it. As, is this a flavored whiskey, or is it still finished? But then you think of like honey barrels where people.
Right. So, if they're able to call it a bourbon and not a whiskey, I have to think that it was truly finished in the barrel, and yes, maybe they soaked that barrel. It's a cognac barrel. Apparently, it looks like they then filled it with vanilla extract, drained it, and put the bourbon in there. So that's a lot of process. But to me, that's legit. That's not putting a flavor into the whiskey after it comes out of the barrel. That's totally different.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like the difference between, if there is any, of the honey barrel finished bourbons being in a honey barrel that someone made barrel aged honey in, and then so it was actually repurposed. It served a purpose to age another product, and then went back and got filled with bourbon, as opposed to barrels that just get filled with honey, the honey gets dumped out, and then the bourbon gets finished in it. I mean, the labeling's going to be the same, but I mean, in effect, one of them is actually a flavored bourbon, which is obviously no longer bourbon. The other one could probably appropriately be called finished because it is in a barrel that held something else. It's semantics, and I don't know. Well, if there's only a lawyer around that can clarify this.
All I can say is let's see how vanilla-y it tastes, and if there are any other flavors at all in this product, that's where the rubber hits the road for me. I know I'm not going to go to Georgia, New Jersey, or Florida to try and pick up a bottle. I like the part of it I like, and I think what you liked about it too, Ed, is like, oh, here's this guy who basically cultivated vanilla. And think about all the ramifications that has. And if somebody's going to put out a bourbon that honors this person, I'm all for that as far as a concept goes.
Yeah, especially because he was a 12-year-old boy who was a slave, who did what nobody else had done at the time, although apparently someone tried to steal his credit, as happens. But fortunately, history has brought us back to him. So, I mean, the whole story around this is great, which is why I actually included it.
Yeah, I think it's a great story, and bourbon is a great way to tell stories, as we know. So here's another one that's been brought to light. Good for them.
Yeah. All right, the last one I actually ran out and bought yesterday is the Woodford Reserve Chocolate Whisper Redux. Woodford Reserve just announced the latest release in their distillery series. At 139.4 proof, Chocolate Whisper Redux, which is not easy to say, by the way, is their highest proof offering yet. This bourbon was produced immediately after the Master's Collection Chocolate Malted Rye, and a whisper of chocolate from the deep roasted rye that was used in that carried over into this distillate, influencing the flavor profile of this bourbon with the roasted chocolate notes. So it's the usual Woodford mash bill, but it got flavors from their chocolate malted rye by following it. So this second release is 12 years old. Yeah, there was a first release, I think in 2021 maybe.
Just a chocolate malted rye, I think?
No, the first release of this.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which well, we can talk about it when I finish the thing. So it's, as I said, bottled at 139.4 proof, and it's $99 for a 375 milliliter bottle. And so that first one I remember because there's people that really like the chocolate malted rye, but that had a very strong chocolate malted flavor to it. Yes, it did. Yeah. Whereas when this came out, not this one I haven't tasted yet, but the last one, it was much more subtle on chocolate malt. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. I mean, I like, being able to get a chocolate flavor in a bourbon as long as it's not overwhelming. And I agree, the chocolate malted rye was a little bit too strong for my taste on the chocolate. So I'm interested in try this. I haven't tried the earlier version either. I like the branding, the whisper. The whisper part of that is a good indication that you're not going to be bowled over by the chocolate. Maybe it's not dessert tasting, but just enough to twinge your palate, which is great. Woodford is great at that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And then, and for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, chocolate malt does not have chocolate in it. It refers to the level of roasting that it gets. So it becomes sort of a chocolate brown in color. So you get this sort of roasted malt flavor to it, which some people make akin to chocolate itself. I personally don't get as much of the chocolate flavor, maybe because I used to homebrew and I used to eat the malts to know what they tasted like. So I get the flavor of that roasted malt in it. But yeah, the first one was very subtle. But the really striking thing about this one is the 139.4 proof. I mean, Woodford's standard proof that Chris Marsh was using for everything was 90.4, except for those
right, yeah.
The few that are bottled at the barrel strength. So this is crazy high.
And 12 years old is an old Woodford Reserve product,
yes,
too. So those two things make it truly unique. I know it was probably just available with the gift shop. This is one of those things where we wish they had lots and lots of it. It's going to be a unicorn. Hopefully you'll find a bottle out there, or maybe you'll see one behind a bar and you'll be able to get a pour. But it sounds like a great development. I'm interested to see how it drinks at 139 plus proof.
Yeah, so. I'm very interested. I've obviously never had a Woodford at this proof, and I'm trying. I mean, and 12 years old is very old as well. I mean, when I first saw the emailing for this, I was like, $100 for another 375 milliliter bottle. But then I read 12 years old, and then I read 139.4 proof, which, by the way, is 50 proof points higher than the first release.
Yeah.
Which was at the 90.4.
So that's the Angels got a bigger share. It's just anything that's 12 years old, there's going to be less of it, and when it comes out, I assume it's the barrel proof that they, God forbid, they had to proof it down to 139. And so it's got to be a rare product, and then the pricing reflects that. That's pricey, but I understand why.
Well, I was wondering, because this is not unlike the A. Smith Bowman's proof, which was what, 139.7.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if they're intentionally keeping it under 140 for shipping.
They could be doing that because, again, you're not allowed to ship anything over 140 proof, and I can't imagine from a hazard standpoint that 139.4 is much different from 140.5 proof. But
and it doesn't legally have to be, because I thought the proof has to be ±1 for your label. So
yeah, and I don't know, but anyway, I'd say you probably ought to go pick this one up in person if you think you're going to get it.
Yeah, well, it sold out online yesterday, which was the first day that it was released, and it was at the distillery because I got there 5 minutes before it closed yesterday and got it. So it's
great.
Probably still there this morning. But yeah, so it's a really interesting one.
Well, so I ran across a release that I'm not sure there was a lot of publicity about, but you're familiar with Frey Ranch, right, Ed?
Mm-hmm.
So they have 100% barley whiskey, and it's not malted barley. It's just barley. They use their pot still distillation, 110 proof, 4 years, 8 months old, $60 for a 375 ml. I'm not sure how great a whiskey would be if it's just made from barley. Have you ever had 100% barley whiskey?
Unmalted?
Unmalted, yeah.
No, I mean, so I was prepared for you because I actually read about that as well. And I was thinking the same thing. I mean, number one, I don't know how much, fermentable sugars and stuff. I mean, it may still have those, but the enzymes, I mean, if it's not malted, I didn't know what roles it would play. But, the Irish whiskeys have which one, the pot still, is that the one that's a mix of half and half malted and unmalted. So there's a precedent for it. But no, I've never had 100%.
Right.
unmalted.
And I think highly of Frey Ranch. And you know, I'll keep an eye out for that. So if I come across a bottle, we'll try it and see what it does to have unmalted barley as a base. So
Well, I'll be looking forward to when you get it in the mail.
it's not hazmat, so I can get it mailed to me.
Yes.
So that's good.
Because I'm interested in trying that one as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and Frey Ranch is known for its I think they've got the grain to glass motto or whatever, because they grow their grains.
Yeah.
You know, grind them, distill them. It all happens all right there. So that's a nice aspect of their operation.
Yeah, it's another place on my list that I'd like to go, but it's a little far from Vegas, so I don't usually get out to that part of Nevada.
Right,
but,
right.
Alrighty, so that wraps it up, I guess, for this week. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Want to spring on me? Try to take me by surprise?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, since we're talking about Frey Ranch, I did run across one other thing. They have joined the University of Kentucky's Estate Whiskey Alliance. And I don't know that much about the Estate Whiskey Alliance, but I think it ties into the whole, you know, if you will, sort of estate grown, that everything happens on site and it's sourced locally. And so I can't tell you a lot about the UK's Estate Whiskey Alliance, but I'm glad to see there's a partnership there between this operation out in Nevada and the University of Kentucky, which has got a growing and well-respected distillery program. So.
Well, it looks like you don't read my newsletters as carefully as you should, because there was a story about that a number of months back.
Well, how about that? So that's hopefully that won't keep me from being called back next 2 weeks, but we'll see. So.
Well, you've got plenty of time to read through the newsletter archives.
That's what I'm gonna have to do. Yeah, for sure. So,
all right. Great, and thanks again for joining me. I'll do my little closing. Oh, but now you tell everybody where they can find you now that you have an online presence.
You can find me now on Instagram. I'm Dean of Bourbon with underscores there, and it's sort of sparse right now, but it'll keep growing as the weeks go by. So check me out, follow me, make comments. All ideas are welcome about how we can promote bourbon in our society. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Dean. All right, well, that about does it for this week. I hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Bourbon Obsessed Bourbon Podcast. Be sure to like and follow us at your preferred podcast provider so that you don't miss an episode. You can also head over to bourbonobsessed.com to read the print version of my newsletter, where you can find links to press releases and full versions of the stories mentioned in this podcast. You can also sign up to have my newsletter delivered directly to your inbox. While you're on my website, you can also read some of our over 300 bourbon reviews and over 50 distillery write-ups. Finally, I can be found on Instagram at bourbon_obsessed and on Facebook at bourbon obsessed. Have a great weekend. Cheers!